Hello and welcome to the Ivy and the Arch podcast, a Major League Baseball podcast with an emphasis on the Chicago Cubs and the St. Louis Cardinals. My name is Aaron. I'm joined by Caleb as always, and we are back after a almost 2 month long hiatus. We are back in business here. We have missed quite a bit, and in all honesty, I don't think it's a bad thing that we took as long of a break as we did. It was not, a full intended break. We didn't mean to miss 2 months. Just life got in the way, work, school, sickness, yada, 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 whatever it was. But a lot has happened in the 2 months that we have been gone in the baseball world. The Cubs and Cardinals have sunk to the bottom of the division and have stayed there really pretty much since we left. The Cardinals have been just such a struggle to watch this year. Cardinals fans, I feel bad for you. This team was supposed to be doing, incredible things this year, and to see the struggles they've had early on, I can't imagine what it's like watching from that side. And then on my side with the Cubs, it's just been kind of just a mediocre, disappointing season. I mean, this team was supposed to be better than 500. We have guys on this team that should be playing like a better than 500, ball club, but they're not, and we're here. So, Caleb, after all this time gone, how have you been?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Glad to be back. It's always tough towards the end of the school year, and I know you got some things going on too. So, I'm glad that summer and there's less things in the way, and there's more time to watch baseball.
Heck yeah.
Unfortunately, the product on the field for these teams has not been great, as you were saying, and really just across the league, it's been super weird when you look at some of the standings. I mean, I had saw that the Mets were under 500, and that's a big surprise um, for the baseball world. And then, of course, the Cardinals and how poor they've been doing this year. And as you were saying, that you would hoped that the Cubs would have gotten off to a better start. And even teams like the Diamondbacks on the flip side of things, Diamondbacks are a lot better than people expected, as well as the Pittsburgh Pirates and some other teams. So,
Yeah.
lots of surprises this year, but I'm excited to dive in and talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, just first off the cuff, one of the last things you said there with the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think we had talked about that when we were doing our predictions episode for the year about how kind of the Diamondbacks would be that sneaky team in the division. I know I was very, very adamant that the Padres were just going to up and run away. I feel like most of my predictions from this year have just fallen flat on their face, and which I don't think a lot of people would have saw coming. I thought I had relatively balanced and not super outlandish predictions. The Padres, on paper, should be running away with the NL West right now. Like, it's very clear they should be running away with it. But yet the Diamondbacks at 41-28 lead the NL West by 2.5 games over the Dodgers. It's incredible stuff what we're seeing. You're talking about the Mets; they're 4 games under 500. The Phillies just broke 500; they're 35-34. Obviously, besides the Cubs and the Cardinals, the Mariners are a game under 500. The Texas Rangers, I wrote them off so hard. I don't think anybody in the baseball industry really took into account what Bruce Bochy was going to do to that ball club. He's a world class manager. I think maybe after what we saw happen with La Russa and the White Sox last 2 years, whatever it was, about how you bring a older manager out of retirement, it might not be a good thing in this day and age of analytical ball. What Bruce Bochy has done to the Texas Rangers ball club, playing in that kind of division where there's teams like the Astros and the Mariners that are hungry and ready to go, is nothing short of incredible. I believe they have the best run differential they do in all of the American League, and I think all of Major League Baseball. They have the best run differential. Their expected win loss is 46-21, and they're 42-25. So the advanced metrics under the hood, you know, the Rangers are so good, and they are projected to be even better than they are, which is nuts. And that's without Jacob DeGrom, who, for those of you who don't know, DeGrom signed a 5 year, I think $185 million deal with the Texas Rangers this offseason, leaving his longtime team, the New York Mets. That deal it raised some eyebrows at first. We knew DeGrom was going to get paid. I didn't think anybody thought he was going to get close to 200 million with just his injury history. He made a couple starts for the Rangers amidst some minor injury bugs, and then it was announced a couple weeks ago that he had to undergo his second Tommy John surgery of his career and will miss at least 12 months. I don't think we would expect to see him back. So it's incredible that the Rangers are doing what they're doing without him. The offense, I think every single starting lineup hitter for the Texas Rangers has an OPS plus over 100, which is absurd. Absurd. I don't think any other team is close to that right now, maybe besides the Rays.
Yeah, I mean it's insane what they've been able to do, and I don't want to say that I underestimated them. I struggle to believe that they would stay healthy. And in
Yeah.
some cases, like you were saying with DeGrom, they haven't. DeGrom did go down, but everyone else on the team has just pulled their weight that it's been basically impossible for them to not succeed. So
Yeah, and it's
props to the Texas Rangers, and we've seen like you were talking about with La Russa, and even uh, gosh, what is his name with the Mets?
Tara Buck Showalter.
Yeah, Showalter. I mean, he had a successful first season over there, and I kind of thought that it would continue into this year. I mean, obviously, some of it's going to be based on the players and the performances you're getting, but um, I'm just shocked to see how successful that was. And they pulled Mike Maddox from the Cardinals like
Right.
really quickly, kind of a little bit after the season, but he was retiring, and they pulled him basically out of retirement because he lives in Texas anyway. So.
That was kind of part of the weird coaching carousel that the Cardinals went through this offseason. They were supposed to have Matt Holliday come in as either the hitting coach or the bench coach, and he never did. Mike Maddox left. Um, I know
Jeff
somewhere off in
Albert
the
left.
Jeff Albert. I know somewhere on a beach, Mike Schilt is laughing his head off at the current state of the franchise. That's probably a pretty good segue. I'm gonna let you go first because your team's current season, everything that's happened is a lot worse off than my Cubbies. Just give me your thoughts right now. Like what we said the other day in our group chat that you turned off all notifications for scoring for the Cardinals team. We were talking yesterday about the game. I was just kind of tuning in while I was at work, and I was noticing a couple things that happened after the Giants tied it up. Um, just give me your thoughts, the current state of the St. Louis Cardinals franchise. What are you as a fan watching? What are you confused about? Like, just give us your thoughts on what's going on right now.
It feels like everyone within this organization is completely stonewalled on what's going on and how to get out of this. Um, I am a big fan. I've always been a big fan and a big supporter of the moves that John Mozeliak has made throughout my support of being a fan of this team. And you could see over the last few seasons how it was slowly building towards a team that was an aging rotation with a bullpen with a lot of question marks and a lineup full of guys who were home run or bust. And, you know, except for a few guys, let's say Tommy Edman, Nolan Arenado on good days, Paul Goldschmidt last year, there's a few performances you could single out, but everyone on that team relies on the long ball, and it's just not getting it done this year. And the problem is the pitching, whether it's the rotation or the bullpen, it does not matter. It is just so mediocre that this lineup has no chance to stay in a game. When you are down 2-0 going into the bottom of the first on home games, every single game, it's insurmountable, Aaron. There's nothing that this team can do to raise morale because they are always losing. And then when they do have the lead, no matter who is coming in to pitch the eighth or the ninth inning, they are guaranteed to blow that lead. It's something that is destined about this team that they cannot just have an easy closeout of a game. We were talking that, what'd you say, April 30th was our last episode.
Yeah.
So I pulled up May's calendar here. This team was so low going into the basically the Cubs series starting on May 8th. So to start May to start the month out, they got swept by the Angels at home, which is inexcusable, and then they almost got swept by the Tigers. They came back and they won that last game of that series. From there, they were in last place. They were, I believe, 14 games under 500 at that point, and they go into Wrigley, and I just expected a bloodbath. And they came out and they won two of three.
Mm.
And then they swept a series in Boston, which they haven't done. I think it was the 70s I saw was the last time they had done that. And then they take two of three from the Brewers. And then they take three of four from the Dodgers. And now you're looking at a team that is all of a sudden 4 games out.
Yep.
They all of a sudden have a chance to, erase this terrible franchise worst start in over 50 years and make something happen. And then they go into 7 straight games against the Reds and the Guardians and they blow it. They cannot take advantage. They go, I believe it's 2-5 that week against the Reds and the Guardians. And it's just inexcusable, man. Inexcusable. And ever since then, they have just they flatlined. They have gotten worse than they were even before the Cubs series.
Yeah.
And nobody knows what they're doing. Several times this year, you've had Oliver Marmol make suggestions or just straight up call players out, and he has completely lost that clubhouse. John Mozeliak doesn't have the gall inside of him to make a change, and quite frankly, he shouldn't even be in the position to make the change anymore.
Yeah.
I think when you have not won a playoff series since 2019, I think it might be time to look at changing management, changing everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to sit there and say you need to sell the team because it's not going to happen. That's unrealistic. But it's just not getting it cut anymore. I mean, you look at all these franchises that are making these big moves, they spend a lot of money, they make the big splashes. Even the Cubs, man, the Cubs make moves. When Cody Bellinger was out there, they went out and they grabbed him. Has it worked out completely the way they wanted it to? I don't know, maybe not, but they made the move.
Yeah.
They took a chance. This team doesn't take chances. They haven't taken a chance on a player since they lucked into Nolan Arenado. And then they lucked into him opting into the remainder of his contract.
Yeah. I feel like in a sense
They,
though they kind of from an outside perspective, I think they did take a chance on Wilson Contreras.
they did,
Yeah.
but then you know what they did? They gave up on him a month in.
That's that whole thing. I think if that didn't happen, I think we'd be looking at a different ball club right now. I think that kind of shot the confidence of Wilson and also just kind of threw the whole pitching staff into this state of dysfunction. It gave them more power than they probably should have had. That should have stayed within, the manager and the coach's role because I think I read some reports that they were preferring Kinsner over Contreras catching or whoever else it may have been. But that whole Contreras catching situation just for me just kind of like seems like the obvious glaring point of like something that really went wrong this year off the field. Like they handled that off the field and the on the field product suffered because of it.
Yeah, you're completely right. You're right on base there. And this season from the start, I mean, you looked at I just had a terrible feeling, terrible gut wrenching feeling when this team won spring training. They had like the best spring training record, and I thought this is just gonna blow up. And then, sure enough, you watch the first series of the year against the Blue Jays, and it's like everything that they've been struggling with happened in that series. They
Right.
had a lead on opening day. They blew it like three different innings. I just could not fathom how bad the pitching was, and it has just continued to be that bad. It has not
Yeah.
gotten better. There's been a stretch. I will say this. They went, I think, the first 2 weeks without a quality start. It hasn't been that bad. Like, they still sprinkle one in here or there. But guess what? They lose 2-1. So it doesn't matter.
Right. I mean, the starting pitching outside of Jordan Montgomery, who is an impending free agent and nothing has been done about him, he's your best starter, and he's got a 3.91 ERA. The Cubs pitching hasn't been great either, but just the struggles that rotation has ensued. Steven Matz getting bumped from the rotation after, the contract he has. I know he's still owed, a ton of money over the next 1 or 2 years, but Steven Matz, for example, in the last game that you guys played against the Giants when they walked it off, he brought in Matz when he had plenty of other right-handed. I don't know your bullpen well, but I know he had other right-handed options in that bullpen. I think Verhagen was available. I think Stratton was available as well. And the next three hitters in that Giants lineup hit. They didn't hit lefties like dominantly, but they hit lefties well. Tyro Estrada was one of them, and those guys who hit lefties well knocked Matz around and scored 3 runs off of him. Granted, these extra inning games, I'm not a fan of the runner on second base rule. I never have been. I never will be. I think it gives an unfair advantage to the team that goes first, sets the momentum, and then puts the pressure on the home team in the bottom of the inning. So I kind of don't judge as much about these extra inning losses. But the fact that you had the Giants down to their last strike with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth inning, and then Conforto delivers
Yeah.
that game tying
That's
hit.
that's the solution, man, is don't blow the game in the ninth, and then you don't have to worry about who's on second and 10th.
Right. I can't imagine. I don't remember the last time the Cubs were down to the last strike that they needed and the game got tied up. That's got to be a frustrating watch as a fan. Not that I mean, I know you didn't watch it yesterday, but like for Cardinals fans out there, like baseball fans in general, if that happens to your team, you're furious. It's like you literally had it in reach right there. You had him.
I mean, I think I saw that that's like the fourth time this season that that's happened
To like in general or the Cardinals?
to the Cardinals.
Wow. I'm
The
looking here
fourth time
now.
that they've lost the game after having the lead with 2 strikes and 2 outs in the ninth.
The Cardinals are 2-4 in extra innings. They're 7-16 in one-run games.
And they have 15 blown saves in the ninth.
That's insane. Who's your guys' primary closer? Who has that been? Has it been Gallegos?
It was Ryan Helsley for a while.
He
He
got
was
hurt.
blowing games so much they pulled him out. Started putting in Gallegos. Gallegos blows games. They all blow games.
There's no
They
clear
all
answer
lose.
there either.
There's no clear answer. Um, if you need a guy to come in and throw strikes, he throws balls. If you need a guy to come in and throw get a ground ball, he gives up a sac fly. There's just there's no clear answer because no one wants the job. No one wants to be the guy. Everyone just wants to be the guy that blows the game. So
Right. And I think,
it's just been miserable to
yeah,
watch this like decent Pirates team. No offense, I don't think they're like the greatest team ever,
nope.
but to watch this Pirates team trample you, and then let the same thing happen from the Reds, and I just don't understand. Um, and if those teams are going to be good, that's fine. Like if the problem is you're playing decent teams that are competitive and they beat you for that reason, that's completely fine. But we have kind of a boneheaded manager at the moment that is contributing to losing games. You had said something in our baseball group chat right before Mats blew the game about interesting. Thairo Estrada has really good numbers against lefties. I
Yeah.
don't think Oliver Marmol even looked at that. I don't think that's something he even considered because he just doesn't do that.
And for me too, it's like Mats is a guy who can go multiple innings. Mats doesn't seem like the guy, like, especially with the struggle that he's had. I guess I can see it where you maybe would want a guy that you can go 2, 3 innings if you keep the game tied. Um, but in that instance where you look at the lineup card and it's like, are you willing to risk the first 3 or 4 guys in that lineup doing some damage against Steven Matz when you could play the bullpen game and play it piece by piece? Like what I would have done, and I'm not a manager obviously, but I would have let one of my righties go out just for the 10th inning and set that tone because it's a 3 batter minimum. So you go take
Yeah.
Verhagen out there or you go take Stratton out there. Just get those 3 guys who have prominent stats against lefties out and then throw Mats in there if the game is still tied. Um, but give your guys another chance to score in the bottom of the inning before you try to go to the multi-inning route there. I get the logic, but at the same time, with the matchups as it is, and with your team scuffling the way that it is, you got to play the matchup game in that scenario because you got to get this win, especially after you blew it the way that you did. Um, just brutal, brutal. And the Cubs have been no stranger to bullpen struggles as well. The Cubs rotation has been really outside of Wesneski, who's been, a disappointment this year with his steps back that he's taken, and Tyone, who's starting to have a couple good starts strung together, but still he's got a 6.70 ERA this year. Stroman and Drew Smiley, besides his clunker last night, and Justin Steele before he got hurt, were just tearing it up. I mean, Stroman's pitching tonight. As of before this game, he had a 2.42 ERA. Justin Steele a 2.65 ERA. Drew Smiley a 3.59 after one clunker start yesterday. The rotation's been really really good, and then the bullpen's just been a mixed bag of crap. And the problem is there's nobody in the minors to you fill it. We've tried that option. We tried that with Jeremiah Estrada, who was supposed to be somebody. He's got a 6.75 ERA, and he was sent back down. Brandon Hughes, who was Ross's go-to guy last year, was lights out for most of the year. Had a knee injury in the beginning of this year. He's on the 15-day IL again. He's got a 7.24 ERA in 13 innings. Brad Boxberger, a 5.52 ERA in 14 innings. Keegan Thompson completely fell apart, 4.42 ERA. Um, it's just been a disappointing. I said this on one of the last, I think the last podcast we did when I was talking about I'm so sick of how the Cubs don't have a closer, and I think that's partially the reason that Ross can't. I give Ross a lot of crap for his bullpen management, and some of it is justifiable, but I think it's because he also does not have great options to work with in there. He does not have quality, dependable arms that I can guarantee I'm going to go to in the seventh, eighth, and ninth inning to lock down a game. There's nobody filling those spots. And the fact that the Cubs do not have like a closer, like you guys had Halsey before he got hurt and before he started blowing games. We've used a mixed bag of Leiter Jr., but he's been getting lit up lately. Alzolai's been in there a couple times, but lefties still seem to hit him pretty hard. We tried Fulmer early on in the year. That experiment didn't work out well. Not having a closer to anchor the back of your bullpen doesn't set you up to be able to put guys out there in the eighth and the seventh innings to more comfortably close games. And it seems like in general, bullpens seem to be struggling quite a bit across the board. I know the Phillies and Craig Kimbrell got off to a rough start again this year, but they're figuring it out. But yeah, between the Cubs and the Cardinals, the bullpens are just not doing what they're supposed to be doing for either of those two teams.
No, not at all. I mean, I'll have to pull up stats from our bullpen here, but look, man, I gave up all hope in this guy or in this organization. I can't blame it on Ollie. When they sent down Zach Thompson, who was a viable option in that bullpen, a viable lefty, albeit, and said that we're going to stretch him out to be a starter in 2024. I just completely like that. That was something that was said. We want him to start in 2024, so we're gonna
Recently,
stretch him out to make starts. This was when they sent him down in probably late April.
late April. See, that's a decision you make in spring training.
Yeah,
That's not something that's like
he
you get a
knows
month
what
into
they're
the
doing.
year and you're like, oh, you know what? We're gonna stretch you out for next year, and you're not coming back
And
up. What?
it took him a while, but I'll give him credit. They finally did move Mats to the bullpen, so Matthew Liberatore could make consistent starts. This team isn't good enough to be running with a six-man rotation, and they did that for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah. How is
And Liberatore has been like solid. He's been
yeah.
okay.
I didn't realize this too, but Adam Wainwright, he's got a 5.79 ERA. What's been going on with him? Has he looked from somebody who's watched him your whole life? Has he looked like just a shell of himself this year, or like what's been going on with him?
I mean, he's got a lot less starts than everyone else,
That's true.
so I think it's still skewed a little bit. Um, yeah, I mean, he gets knocked around. It's probably I'd have to pull up individual games, but I've seen him go 6 innings and give up two, and then I've seen him go 4 innings and he gave up seven, and like that's the difference. I think that's what sort of determines um, why his ERA is so bad. But he's only pitched 7 games, and that's just low compared to everyone else.
That's true. I'm looking at Steven Matz here to see what his. Okay, so as a starter and as a reliever, he's actually been better as a reliever. Granted, he hasn't been doing it very long. He's just pitched 7 innings as a reliever. He's got a 3.86 ERA through
Yeah.
7 innings as a reliever and a 5.72 ERA through 50 innings as a starter. So it seems to be working out. Besides what happened the other day, for the most part, he's been working out well as a reliever. And his splits are interesting too. So lefty or righties are hitting him really, really hard. Um, Righties are batting 342 against him with a 928 OPS, whereas lefties are hitting 220 against him with a 591. So I'm wondering if Ali is. I'll have to go back. Maybe I was wrong in my judgment about why Ali put him in there. I can't remember if the Giants hitters and up in that inning were all lefties, and maybe that's why he put him in. Um, but I don't know. Maybe Mats will be more of that righty. You can't really say righty specialist because the majority of hitters in baseball are right-handed. But righty
Right.
specialist out of the
Um,
bullpen, Steven
I don't
Matz.
know. Man, I think the correct move is I don't know who, but someone needs to join the rotation, and you probably need to have Jack Flaherty off this team yesterday. Um, I'm pretty soured on Jack after I'm like 90% certain he's the one who came out and had comments about Contreras
Mm.
within the organization, and that's why there was a problem with Contreras. Anyway, I think that was completely on him. But then you look at uh, let me see here. I mean, his ERA after his rough start, it's down to 4.64. He still walks a lot of guys, but
Mm.
outside of that, like it's doable. I think you could still get something for him. So,
That's what I was going to
um,
pivot into after you finish your point here is kind of like the direction of the Cardinals season from this point forward. So finish your thought, and then we'll kind of trail into that.
I was just gonna say he's not in the long-term plans for this team. Uh, Now trading like Goldschmidt, that's a decision that you have to really sit down and think if it's worth it. Um, but Flaherty, I think, is a no-brainer to be traded.
Yeah, I think Flaherty, if he continues the way that he's going, is a no-brainer. Honestly, the problem is you got to have guys coming up and pitching the rest of the year if you trade them, like in the rotation, you know. So if Flaherty gets traded, that may be Matz's back door, you know, back into the rotation. He's going to need to start again at some point. You're paying him 12 million over the next 2 years. You got to get him back in that rotation. But
Yeah.
then you got a guy like Jordan Montgomery, who's a free agent at the end of this year. He's got a 3.91 ERA. Um, Contender's going to want him. I can see a lot of teams who need pitching, Orioles, Diamondbacks, whatever it may be, looking for him. But I mean, just as it stands right now, no trades. Montgomery and Flaherty are all, you know, gone, both gone after this year. If Matz doesn't return to the rotation and Waino retires, that leaves Michaelis and Jake Woodford and Libator in your 2024 rotation with no clear cut answers as to who's coming next. It's kind of a scary thought. But besides the starting pitcher, so Goldschmidt, is that something at this point in the year as a Cardinals fan, logically thinking through this, are you for trading him or are you for keeping him and trying to rebound for next year in the last year of his contract?
I would probably trade him at the deadline
The deadline.
if things continue on this route. If you trade him now, I don't think it makes a huge difference on the return because he has next year anyway. But if you hold on to him and then at the deadline you go, you know what? Here's Goldschmidt. You get a year and a half of Goldschmidt, basically. Um, I think the prospect return is going to end up being similar. So
I'm trying to think in my head here of what teams would be super logical suitors for him with a year of control. Tampa Bay, honestly, would probably be the big suitor there. They went hard after Freeman a couple years ago. Um, Trying to think who else would be a really logical landing spot that would be buying a first baseman. Um, I don't think you trade him in division. Yeah, I think honestly Tampa Bay is probably a good bet. Christian Walker is over in Arizona. They don't really need bats. Arizona needs an arm. The Dodgers have Freeman. The Padres maybe because Cronenworth's been struggling, but I don't think they can take on the money. But that's an interesting decision, and I think there's another factor in play there too. Is Arenado opted into his deal? He didn't opt out and resign. He opted into his deal under the impression that this team was going to compete. Now he's been vocal this year about adamant that we are struggling. We are struggling as a team. We're not producing what we need to be doing. What kind of message does that send to him if you trade a guy like Goldie, even though he only has a year and a half left on his deal?
I think he's going to be upset. And, he's already upset. But he did actually, I thought it was interesting. He came out and made comments today about uh, how Ollie's been dealt a tough hand. He said that specifically. And I
I
think
saw that today.
that's a huge choice thing to say when you'd have to be oblivious to not see the comments that people are making about Oliver Marmol. So I don't know if that's smoke. I don't know if the team really does have Marmol's back. I just think you have to look at two really bad situations that went down with players between Tyler O'Neill and Contreras, and you have to be concerned.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. I think if you send anyone packing who's not Jack Flaherty, which you could spin as well, we're retooling.
right.
Like we're not gonna engage in conversation with Jack about a contract extension. It just makes sense to trade him in a year where you're barely hanging on, or just completely out of it in general. But if you trade, I don't even know. Helsley's not healthy, so he doesn't make sense. But just for example, let's say Helsley is healthy July 20th. If you trade Helsley and you trade Goldschmidt, you are sending a pretty rough message to Nolan Arenado that like next year we kind of expect to not compete.
Yeah, and I think the other like, do you have I guess what's his name? You've got a first base prospect who's kind of been tearing it up.
Luke and Baker,
Luke and Baker. Is he like legit? Has he had a couple minor league seasons where he's put it together, or is
I
this
don't
just kind
see
of like a
anything more
flare?
than Luke Voigt at the moment.
Yeah,
Now, granted, they called him up just so he could sit on the bench, so that's not a great indicator of how he will do at the major league level. But
yeah,
he's hit AAA just fine. So, um, if if you're gonna start making trades, one, of either Tommy Edman or Brendan Donovan makes sense because you do have Mason Wynn coming up next year. Unless you are going in at an elite pitching person, whether it's a high rated prospect or, a Shane Bieber, for example, then you probably will have to surrender Mason Wynn.
Yeah, a little bit
They're
of
going to want
breaking.
Mason Wynn over Edman. So
Yeah, a little bit of breaking news here too. Nothing super prominent to the Cubs and the Cardinals, but just wanted to say it while we're on here. The Las Vegas Legislative Assembly and the governor officially passed the legislation funding the Oakland Athletics' new stadium build in Las Vegas, and it was reported that MLB owners were expected to unanimously ratify the movement agreement. For that franchise in the next coming weeks. So I believe in the next season or two, the Oakland Athletics will now be the Las Vegas Athletics. And why this is a little more prominent than you might think is that is one of the last two dominoes that need to fall before Rob Manfred and Major League Baseball officially start the expansion process for two more teams. Oakland and their in their stadium situation was one, and Tampa Bay is the second. So once Tampa Bay resolves whether or not they're going to build a new stadium to replace the Trop in Tampa or if they're going to move somewhere else in Florida, once those two things are done, it's not confirmed, but it's the general belief among those in the baseball industry that Major League Baseball will be expanding to 32 teams at some point within the next, I would say, 5 years. We start to see that process begin and come to an end. I'm excited about that. I didn't get to live through the last expansion process, which was that the it was it the what were the last two expansion teams? Um,
DC and uh, Colorado? That doesn't sound right.
I'm trying. No, the Rockies were one of them. I'm looking. I should know this. Let's see here. Bum, bum, bum,
It
bum,
wasn't
bum.
the Nats.
No, I think that was. I think the. When was it? I'm looking at the list here. Hang on. 1972. No, it was sooner than that. Okay, so 1993, the National League expansion to 14 teams. The AL expanded in 1977 to 14 teams, but the National League remained at 12 until 1993, when it added two new franchises: the Colorado Rockies and the Florida Marlins were the last two expansion teams. Oh
Well,
no,
what's
sorry,
this?
1998. I was
98.
wrong. The
Okay.
Rays and the Diamondbacks. That's when we got to 15. So
I would have. Wow. I'm shocked.
yeah, year I
I,
was
I
born.
just assumed the Rays were around longer.
Right.
Hmm.
It's crazy. I thought the Diamondbacks. I mean, the Diamondbacks had some success with Randy Johnson and all those
Yeah, they
guys that
won a World Series
they
three
did.
years later.
Yep. Um.
Very
So
Vegas Knights like.
right, right. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm excited. I firmly believe Nashville will be one of the two expansion cities, and I'm very excited for that. I think Nashville, it's a growing population, growing city. You got so much going on there already, and they already have a. The thing about Nashville too is they are the most prepared um, expansion project right now. They already have a team name. They've got an ownership group in place. They've got major league stars, country music stars, all these people investing, and they're going to be the Nashville Stars if that's in fact what it's going to be. I think Nashville's going to be one, and it would not surprise me to see a second Canada team, maybe going back to Montreal. I've heard Portland thrown around. And something that people were talking about too is that if the A's move to Vegas, which is I guess is in fact happening now, Oakland is back up for grabs as an expansion city. There could be a group that brings baseball back to Oakland with a new agreement with the city,
Yeah,
completely brand new team, new name, whatever it might be. I think that'd be cool. I mean, if John Fisher wants to screw over his fans and move to Vegas, I think some other rich guys should screw over them and bring baseball back to Oakland. It's a good baseball city when they're winning. I mean, you look at those wild card teams when they still had Matt Chapman, Matt Olson, when they traded for Jason Hamill and John Lester, back when the Cubs nabbed Addison Russell from them when they were in contention. Oakland can pack that crappy Coliseum if they wanted
yeah.
to. So I'm excited for that. A little bit of breaking news there. I'm excited for expansion. I'm excited to kind of watch this happen. And for me personally, as kind of like a nerd and really, really into baseball, the thing I'm looking forward to the most is the expansion draft. I want to see that happen. I want to see who gets poached from where. I want to see what teams are going to be willing to trade to get their guys back, who's protected, who's not, whole nine yards. And I think, too, the draft, the two expansion teams automatically get the top two picks in the draft. So
Yeah, that'll be exciting.
Good time to be a baseball fan.
And they're going to a lottery system, right?
They already did last year. Last year was
Okay.
the first year the lottery system was implemented, and I like that because teams like the Athletics this year and the Royals are not guaranteed the first overall pick. You're
Yeah.
just not. You have an incentive to win. Besides that, you also have like the Rookie
Oh,
of
we
the Year
might be talking
incentives.
Cardinals in a little bit,
Yeah,
man.
you may be. The Cardinals, I mean, MLB Tankathon is a website I look at.
I'm not sure that I ever saw this team like having to realistically consider getting the first round pick.
The Cardinals are currently tied for the best odds at the number one overall pick at 16.5%. Tied with even though they have a much better record than Oakland and Kansas City, the worst three teams in baseball have the same odds to get the top pick. The Cubs currently have the eighth best odds to get the number one overall pick. They currently sit at 3.9%. Pretty crazy.
Lovely.
That would be weird. A team like the Cardinals, who are built to win now, that'd be the first example of this. If the Cardinals season continues derailing the way that it is, the Cardinals would be the first team that's kind of like win now, ready to go, to potentially have a top three pick. I guess like the Red Sox did it when they lost several years ago, a really bad season after they won the World Series or something. Just for fun though,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sim this lottery real quick and see what would happen if the balls flew in favor on this website. If this is the sim, the Cardinals would pick fifth. The Cubs actually jumped up 4 spots and one up the Cardinals, picking fourth.
Sounds about right.
And
Sounds like
Oakland,
the 23 Cardinals.
Oakland jumped up and is picking number one overall. So yeah, fun stuff going in there. The MLB draft is actually 23 days away too, so that should be pretty fun to watch. See what's happening there. Yeah, cool. All right, anything else about the Cardinals you kind of want to talk about before we switch gears here?
I don't think so, man.
Well, switching
I've said my
gears.
piece.
Yeah, switching gears a little bit, kind of talking about the Cubs season, the state of everything that's been going on. The Cubs, I feel like we had high hopes going into the year. Talented roster, big names: Dansby, Nico, Bellinger, Trey Mancini's reputable. Eric Hosmer was supposed to be a salvageable first base option until Matt Mervis was ready. He didn't pan out. Tucker Barnhart, another named guy there. You added Jameson Tyone, who's been a workhorse his entire career. You added him there. Expected a big year from Stroman. You re-signed Smiley. Suzuki's supposed to have a bounce back year. And then it just kind of, I don't know how to put into words what the Cubs season has been thus far, besides just bleh. Just bleh. It's just been tough watch after tough watch after painful, oh, are we back moments, and then brutal 10 plus run blowouts the next like 3 games in a row. No consistency. Granted, some injuries have played into that. Steele's hurt. Bellinger was hurt on a random catch at the wall. Tyone was dealing with some stuff. It's been a weird watch. It's been a frustrating watch in terms of some of the decisions that have been made. Eric Hosmer should not have lasted out of April. Should not have lasted, honestly, out of March, the first couple of days of the season. It was a miracle he lasted as long as he did. You've got Jed and Carter continuing to bring up utility guys like Mike Talkman, who literally, I'm gonna pull up the Cubs stats now. I think his OPS is literally like 20. What is it? Did I say Mike Talkman? I meant Miles Mastroboni. Miles Mastroboni's OPS plus is 23. 23. And he was brought back up after Brandon Hughes was hurt and was DHing right away after being DFA'd. That's the state of this Cubs team. When we have 3 catchers. We're carrying 3 catchers on the roster. You cannot convince me otherwise that if you are carrying 3 catchers on your roster, 2 of them need to be starting every game. Minimum. You are and one of that needs to be in DH. You are killing the versatility of your team by keeping 2 of your catchers on the bench when they can only play one position, and it's catcher. Miguel Amaya has a 98 OPS plus, and he hasn't started in like 4 or 5 games. I can't remember the last time that he started. Tucker Barnhart has a 30 OPS plus, and is barely hitting his weight. He's probably hitting under his weight. He's hitting a .181 with 26 strikeouts, no power, 1 extra base hit this year. So it's been frustrating. The starting pitching, you waste a lot of good starts from Marcus Stroman. You waste a lot of good starts from Drew Smiley, who up until his last start was having the season of his career. I mean, he had that almost perfect game. He had several more really, really solid outings that we didn't really expect to see from him. And then you've got a guy like Kyle Hendricks coming back after missing, I believe, all of last year, um, and throwing almost a no hitter the other night. And he was so close to getting it too. So you've got vintage Kyle Hendricks, who's been pitching really, really well. You've got Justin Steele, who before the injury was pitching really well, and then Marcus Stroman and Drew Smiley. This team should be better um, than the 30-37 record that they currently sport. There are absolutely no excuses as to why this team should not be at least second in the division right now. The Brewers are on a 6-game losing streak. The Cardinals are on a 5-game losing streak with their season actively spiraling out of control. The Reds have the Reds are coming up. They're 34-35. They're 8-2 in their last 10. So their young hitters are what's propelling them right now. And then the Pirates, I don't know how the Pirates are leading the division at this point. They're kind of fluky as well. But this, just like the Cardinals, this Cubs team should be playing way better than they are. They're currently losing. They're playing right now. They're down 2-0 in the bottom of the third. They got 3 hits, so they're trying to put it together. But they have a chance. They have not swept a team since they swept Oakland like months ago. They have to sweep the Pirates tonight. But yeah, this team, there's guys on this team who are playing as well as they should be, if not better, on the hitting side of the ball. Seiya Suzuki is having one of the best seasons I've seen from a Cubs hitter in a long time. His slash line's 282 batting average, 373 on base. He's hitting the absolute crap out of the ball. I mean, I think his average exit velocity is in the top like 90. It's in the 90th percentile of all of Major League Baseball. So he's hitting it really well. He's been getting on base. And the one thing that this team has been lacking, which I don't want to say that I've been surprised about. You were kind of talking about how the Cardinals rely on the long ball. The Cubs haven't. The person who leads the team in home runs is Patrick Wisdom, and he hasn't hit a home run in weeks. And he's completely fallen off the face of the earth hitting wise. He's got 14. The next highest is Christopher Morel, who hit like 9 in his first week up and then completely fell off as well. Outside of those two guys, the person with the most home runs on this team is Cody Bellinger and Yan Gomes, who has 7. I mean, this team is just not hitting home runs. I mean, Gomes has 7.
Yeah.
Trey Mancini has 4. Nico has 4. Dansby has 6. Ian Happ completely lost his power stroke. He has 5. Seiya has 6. Matt Mervis had 3 in his short time up before he was sent back down today. No power from this team, and I think that's hurt them in a lot of situations because you can't put like Wisdom was supposed to be that guy. Wisdom had such a good start to the year. He was on pace for like 60 home runs after the first month or something. Completely fell off. It's just been a really, really weird watch for this team this year. I've been chirping on Twitter a lot about the managerial decisions David Ross has been making. I've also been adamant that there's really nobody else that could replace him at this moment that would do a better job that he could. I don't want to see Andy Green in this team. And so help me God, if I see Joe Girardi managing the Cubs at any point in my life, I'm going to lose my mind. I don't know if you've ever listened or tuned into a Cubs game when he's in the booth. He is the worst announcer, the worst commentator I have ever watched. Boog hates him. He doesn't show it, but JD does. JD cannot stand Joe Girardi. And I think he stopped because the other night, him and Boog were in the booth together, and JD wasn't there. And it was a home game, which never happens. JD's always at home games. So I think he probably told Marquis, like, hey, I ain't doing this with Joe anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw Joe Girardi. He was actually offered a head coaching position at some college in Florida, and I was on my knees praying that he was going to take that job so I didn't have to hear him again. And then he declined it, and then he was back on the air the next night. So that's just kind of just another punch in the gut there.
Wait, he declined that job?
Oh, yeah, he's not taking it. No. I'm wondering if he's secretly holding out hope that they're going to fire Ross mid-season and be like, hey, man, you want to manage the rest of the year? If I'm Andy Green, I'm pissed. If
honest
Ross
God, man,
fired,
I'll take him. I'll take him over Ali.
You don't want to do that. Girardi's so out of touch with managing. It's incredible. No,
Take a brick wall over Ali.
What's
I
going
have
to
to,
take to get
I have to
Yachty?
listen to Ali. Yeah, exactly. Seriously,
What's it going to take to get him
friggin'
here?
send a blank check to Puerto Rico and tell Yachty he can have what he wants.
Get him on a jet.
Uh,
Get him over here.
if I have to listen to one more post game interview of Ali telling me that like I can't be more upset than the players, like I'm gonna lose it.
Yeah, no, you can be. You can be more
He
upset
has
than the
no
players.
idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, so the Cubs, they had a run differential that was positive for a long time as well. It was in kind of hovering in the 30s and 40s. It's currently sitting at, -1, but if you factor in tonight's score, it's sitting at -3, being down 2-0. The Cubs are 30 and 37 as of tonight, 4.5 games back in this uber weak Central Division. And the division's bad when you're closer to winning your division than you are a wild card. The Cubs are 4.5 back in the NL Central, and they're 5.5 back in the NL Wild Card. So it's easier to win the Central than it is to get a wild card spot at this point.
Yeah.
It's their expected win loss is 33 and 34, and that's the crazy thing too. The Cardinals is also it's 33 and 36 is the Cardinals' expected win loss, and they're 27 and 42. So
Sorry.
they should be they should be playing a lot better than they are. The Cubs have had their own problems. They haven't really been able to beat up on bad teams, and they can't really beat good teams. They're 16 and 23 against teams that are over 500. They've been really, really bad on the road. They're 13 and 21 on the road and 17 and 16 at home. Um, we've had some nice storylines here and there. Matt Mervis was called up for about a month. He did struggle, but he showed signs of what he can do. He hits the ball hard. He's just been making bad, swing decisions. He can't really seem to figure out off-speed pitches, and he's not hitting the fastball well, which is kind of his calling card. Mike Talkman, Chicago area native, has been killing it in center field while Bellinger was hurt, and he killed it so much to the point to where when Bellinger got back, he's actually Belly's playing first base, as far as I know from this point forward. I think that's for two reasons. I think one, it's to help his knee recover properly. You don't really want him jumping around out there in the outfield, making more catches on a brick wall like at Wrigley. And then two, the Cubs at first base this year have just had dreadful offensive production between Trey Mancini, Eric Hosmer, and Matt Mervis. They just haven't been able to put it together. So you're replacing, if you're on the train of, well, Mervis needs to start, I agree with that. But I think he's going to do, I think getting him back down to AAA to figure out some things, get settled in with no pressure is going to do wonders for him, and I think he'll be back up sooner than people think. I think once Belly's knee is healed, I think we'll see him back in center, and I think Mervis will be back up soon. But in the lineup, you're not losing that lefty power bat that's supposedly with Mervis because you're putting Bellinger's lefty power bat back at first base, but Belly also will take his walks. He will lace out a double, and he's a Gold Glove first baseman. Mervis had a couple games where he made some really bad defensive errors at first base, and he's had some really good defensive plays at first base. But to get a little more consistency there on both sides of the ball should only really do good things for the Cubs moving forward. Dansby's finally started to come into his own. I mean, watching him at shortstop is just incredible. Him and Nico up the middle is one of the best double play tandems I think I've ever seen watching Cubs baseball outside of like Javi and Addison Russell before we all knew that he was a piece of shit. Cheering for him. But yeah, I mean, the Cubs have just been this weird watch. I don't really know what the fix is. They're kind of confusing me at this point. They're on a 5-game winning streak. They're on a 2-game win streak, not a 5-game win streak. They're on a 2-game win streak. They're 30 and 37. They're still 7 games under 500, 4.5 back in the division. I don't know what I want them to do at this point in the year. Part of me wants them to go for it, especially if we can start rattling off some wins here. They've got a pretty easy schedule coming up. And I don't mean to say that because we're not able to capitalize on easy schedules, but we have a really good chance to sweep Pittsburgh tonight. We're only down 2, and it's early. We got a tough series against Baltimore coming up at home at Wrigley. Baltimore's been playing really well, but that is winnable, and you can take 2 of 3 from that Baltimore team because they have one of the worst starting pitching rotations in all of baseball. So if you can capitalize on that, you can do that, and then you play Pittsburgh for 3 again, and then we're flying over the pond to go play the Cardinals in London for 2 games. And I think it was announced officially that Wainwright and Libator will be the 2 starting pitchers. And the way that we've
That sounds
seen,
right.
the way that we've seen these international series go, I mean, the Cardinals can't really do much better, in all honesty. But
Might be a rough time for Wainwright, man.
well, you know what's going to be a rough time is that Sunday game. It's going to be Tyone versus Libator, and both those guys have the potential to get shelled. It's a 9 a.m. game, 9 a.m. Central. I think this game is.
Yeah, at the for the second game, the
Yeah, the
first game is
second game.
noon.
Yeah, noon. The second game is 9 a.m. Central. That's going to be a weird watching baseball that early in the morning. But yeah, we've got a
Feel like
good
a peacock
chance.
game.
What was that?
It'll feel like a peacock game.
Yeah, yes, it will. Yeah, no, we've got a chance to really capitalize here between finishing out this Pittsburgh series, taking care of business with Baltimore, and then coming back to Pittsburgh and doing the same thing again. The London series has a really good chance to get the offense going for the team, and it could be the spark the Cardinals need too. In all honesty, I really expect runs to be scored heavily in that series, and it could be what they need. And then you've got 3 against Philly, who's been a mixed bag, 3 against Cleveland, who's been a mixed bag, 4 against Milwaukee, who you can beat, and then 3 against the Yankees in New York, who have been better as of late. So it's a winnable series to go into the All-Star break. You can definitely do it. If they do it, I really would like to see them try to add a third baseman somehow. I don't know. Either play Morel at third base permanently or get a solution there, because he's better when he's playing the field, and then when he's playing the field, he's better at the plate as opposed to DHing. He's not as good as the plate at the plate. And then I don't really know what else we would want to add. I don't really want to pay for a quality starting pitcher. Maybe somebody on a discount. I don't really want to give up a ton of prospect capital this year, and that's kind of where I struggle as well, because it's like I don't want to give up notable names in our system that we're just getting to the point of rebuilding for like a half a year rental. I think any pickups, any additions the Cubs make this offseason or this trade deadline, whether that's in selling or whether that's in buying, need to be, if it's selling, they need to be adding guys that aren't like in low A ball and rookie ball and like 20 years old. They need to be adding guys who are in double A and triple A and getting ready to take that next step to the majors if they're selling. If they're buying, they need to be buying guys with multiple years of control. I don't really know who off the top of my head. I know a closer would be a phenomenal. The Camilo Duvall of the Giants is a phenomenal closer, and if the Giants aren't really doing anything this year or next year or wherever it may be, he's a guy I would love to see them get. I didn't realize this, though. The Giants are 36 and 32 after sweeping the Cardinals, so they're third in the wild card right now.
Yeah,
For the National League.
if you wanna get right, just go ahead and play the Cardinals.
Well, I'd love to get right for 2 games in London, so we'll see how that goes. But I guess if he's out, yeah, I don't know. Getting a multiple year control bullpen piece who has closing experience would probably be a priority, regardless, honestly, of buying or selling. I think if you're selling Stroman, if you're selling Bellinger, if you're selling even Hendricks, Smiley, um, whoever it may be, landing somebody that you can anchor in the back of that bullpen, I think would be huge. I don't know who that would be. I can't really think off the top of my head. But somebody who has closing experience that you can kind of comfortably slot in there for years to come would be awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what the Cubs. I mean, we'll have to give it a couple more weeks to really see the direction that this team is going. I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic of the future for this Cubs team. I think Suzuki, if he continues to play the way that he's been playing, and if Nico and Dansby continue where they're at, if Morel can get some consistent playing time at third base, if Bellinger stays healthy at first, and if Ian Happ can start hitting a couple more home runs here and there, I think this team can make a run. I think the NL Central is still so up for the taking, and I really honestly think the NL Central is going to go down to the last week of the season. And it's not going to be because every team is going to be fighting for it because they're good and winning. I think it's going to be every team is so mediocre that it's going to be very, very close who's going to end up with that division title.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
It will not have anything to do with competitiveness. I just
No.
think that whoever happens to be in first by the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I mean, going back to just looking across all of Major League Baseball as a whole, just the weird seasons that teams are having. Tampa Bay has 50 wins already, and it's June 15th. It's incredible. Baltimore blew my expectations out of the water I did not think that they were going to continue the success they had last year, and they're 43-25. Um,
Yeah.
the Yankees are 39-30. The Blue Jays are 38-32. That was another team. I thought the Blue Jays were going to have one of the best records in all of baseball, and they're 38-32. Alek Manoah, who was one of my Cy Young picks, or one of my top contenders for Cy Young, got optioned to the complex league of the Toronto Blue Jays, which you don't ever see a team. You usually see them get an option to Double A, Triple A, kind of face the same
Yeah.
type of hitting. But they literally were like, go to Florida and don't come back until you figure out what's going on. Like, that's literally what happened. It's incredible. The AL Central had a point for a couple days where no teams were over 500, and the NL Central is getting dangerously close to that point, with the Pirates only 2 games over 500 right now, and Milwaukee is an even 500. So no real surprises in the AL Central. I think we both knew that division was going to be really weak. Didn't really see a whole lot going on there. Kansas City, I did not think was going to be as bad as they are. 18-50. Really, really bad. Really bad. They have a minus 107 run differential, which is nothing compared to Oakland's negative 196 run differential. And that's with the seven. That's even with the 7-3
Yeah.
run that they've been
With
on
their
in their
big
last
streak
10.
going. Yeah.
It's incredible. They won like 6 in a row and then have dropped the last 2. I don't know. The Braves have been really, really dominant, and the Marlins. Luis Ariz has been just carrying that team. Him and Jorge Soler's been hitting a ton of home runs really well, but Luis Ariz has been flirting with 400 and propelling that Marlins team in a division that's really been struggling. The Mets, 4 games under 500. They're without Pete Alonso right now. The Phillies are a game over 500 and trying to climb back into relevance in the playoff picture. And then you've got the NL West as well, where, like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, the Diamondbacks are just cruising on all cylinders right now. They've lost 3 in a row, but they've kind of shocked me. They really need to add some pitching, and I think that's kind of where they have some interesting prospects. They line up with the Cubs really well in terms of Stroman and Smiley and Hendricks and some of the bullpen arms the Cubs could dangle their way as well. I don't know right now if I think that the Diamondbacks are going to be legitimate the rest of the year. What are your thoughts? You think they can hang on to this train they're riding, or do you think the Dodgers are going to come full steam?
Well, even if the Dodgers come, I think the Diamondbacks are going to be definitely a postseason team. I think they need to kind of attack at the trade deadline and get any guys where they're struggling in their lineup or pitching staff. But it's their time, man. They have so many players that are kind of clicking this season and last, and don't mess around with that. It's time. You got to capitalize on it.
Yeah, and the Diamondbacks really have a chance this offseason to put their stamp on the future and how they want to run the division with the free agent pitching class outside of Shohei Ohtani, and maybe like just outside of Shohei Ohtani is not super strong with the performances that some of these guys are having. Aaron Nola has had an up and down year. Julio Urias has had an up and down year. Jordan Montgomery has had an up and down year at this point. But they can go out and get 2 of those guys to pair with Zach Gallen at the top of their rotation, and that's pretty formidable right there with the offense that they've been producing. Now that I think about it too, I know Shohei wants to win, and granted the Diamondbacks is the first time they're winning in a long time. Diamondbacks might be a play for him. Can you imagine a top 2 in your rotation of Zach Gallen and Shohei Ohtani?
No, that would be insane.
And he would fit perfectly in their DH there. It's on the West Coast. It's in a competitive division. And I just don't know if he'd go to a team that doesn't have a consistent track record of winning. I'm not sold on the Diamondbacks just yet. I will be if they make moves at the trade deadline. But Corbin Carroll has been everything everybody has ever hoped he would be if you're a Diamondbacks fan. I mean, the kid can run. He hits for power. He's got extra bases. He gives good defense in the outfield. Diamondbacks have been a fun watch. That's for sure. But yeah, it's been a weird baseball season. It's definitely, the storylines have been a little odd. The injuries have continued to come out of nowhere and hamper a lot of these guys. Speaking of injuries, Carlos Rodon, just random note, signed a big deal with the Yankees this offseason. I don't even know if he's doing rehab assignments right now. Like, I don't
I
think
don't
he's
think he
anywhere
is.
close to game action at this point, which is crazy because he didn't have any injury concerns this offseason. I think he's been dealing with this weird back thing for a long time now. Um, so imagine if the Yankees get him back in that rotation because they're 39-30 without him. The Angels have been playing good baseball. They're 38-32. They're winning. They're only a game and a half back of the wild card. Um, I don't think they're winning the division, so their best bet is to beat out teams like the Astros, the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Mariners for that third wild card spot, which I think is doable. And this is interesting too for me in the American League. The three wild card teams, the Orioles, who I think are overperforming, the Astros, who are underperforming immensely, and the Yankees, who are, I mean, they fall apart in the second half almost every year. I think the AL wildcard is wide open, wide
Yeah,
open.
absolutely.
So we could really see the Angels go for it this year, and I think I had them in my playoff as a sixth wildcard seed. So we'll see what happens. A lot of interesting games coming up. I'm very, very, very excited about the London series. I want to see those two teams score 20 runs each and get those London fans going absolutely bonkers over there. Um, Yeah, I think just to round out my Cubs weird all over the place conversation, at this point, if you were to put a gun to my head and tell me, do I want the Cubs to buy or sell? I want them to buy right now. I think they still have a really good shot at this division. I think there's still potential if Stroman continues pitching the way that he does and if Steele comes back healthy. I think you add an arm. I think you add two bullpen pieces, and I think you add a big, medium to big size bat in that lineup, and you just full steam ahead and send it. Because at some point, you got to start trying to win again. I don't want to go through a
Right.
third straight trade deadline of selling. That's not what this team can do. We're a huge market in a winnable division. You've got to go for it. You've got to go for it. And you know what? If we could, I could throw something together for Paul Goldschmidt that if you guys are looking to sell him, Cubs could use first baseman. So
Yeah, I think on the Cardinal side of things, you got to sell with caution.
yeah,
Like I
cautiously
said,
selling.
you should be shopping Jack Flaherty at this point, but nobody's saying you have to trade Paul Goldschmidt. I think you need to reevaluate in a month and see where you're at.
Yeah, give me a bold prediction. Cardinals trade deadline at this point. If they buy or sell, what do they do? Bold, bold prediction.
I could see them trading Flaherty and one of those two infielders I was saying, Brendan Donovan or Tommy Edman. I could see him trading both, not necessarily in a package, but um, if that's the big move we do at the deadline, it wouldn't surprise me because then you at least cleared a path for Mason Wynn next year.
Yeah, I think bold prediction for the Cubs. Um, I think they buy, and I'm trying to think here of who they get. I think they buy a starting pitcher with multiple years of control and give up a prospect that's going to hurt Cubs fans pretty hard. Whether that's Alexander Canario, whether that's a guy like Jordan Wicks, Ben Brown, one of the starting pitching prospects we've been developing recently. I think that's going to be what it takes to land somebody because we got a couple holes in our rotation for next year. My prediction is they end up trading multiple top 10 prospects for a starting pitcher with years of control at the trade deadline this year. As it stands right now, 2 episodes from now, we could be talking about hypothetical trade packages for both of our teams for all I know about, to sell and not buy. So yeah, that's kind of where it's at. You got anything else to add before we wrap this one up?
I don't think so, man. I'm excited, not excited, eager, eager to see where the next month goes. I am excited to watch the London series, regardless of where the Cardinals are sitting at going into that series. I think it'll be a fun time, and I'm excited to see. It's against the Cubs, and this is a couple years in the making now,
Oh yeah,
or a few years in the making now with COVID. So
I still think the Cubs and Cardinals should have done the Field of Dreams, but I'll
I
take
do too.
London. I'll take London. It's fine. Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be good. We're going to try to get back into a somewhat regular schedule here with the podcast. Maybe not every week. I won't guarantee it every week, but if we can get one out every other week or so, just to kind of touch base on where we're at for the year, especially as we get closer to the trade deadline. It's going to be a lot of more conversations about the direction of our teams and where we're heading with stuff. But to everybody who will watch this episode, I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure Caleb feels the same way, thank you for tuning in again. This was a passion project that we have wanted to do for so long, and it was so fun the first couple months that we did this for, and we're really happy to be back at it. hopefully a little more consistent here. Hopefully we'll have a lot more to talk about in the next couple episodes, especially after this London series. If you wouldn't mind, if you're watching this on YouTube, just dropping a like, helping us get back into the swing of the algorithm, sending this out to people if you're listening on Spotify, wherever it may be, dropping us a follow and continuing to support us there. It means the world to us, and we will see you guys at the next episode. Peace.